Hi guys, in this video we take a look at the Barebones multi-chat client, and we take that code and then we manipulate it. We create a class out of it, which is a base for our TCP Listener class, which is going to lead on to our web server. So it's all very kind of exciting and stuff. So hopefully it won't be too confusing. If you haven't seen any of the other networking videos, there's a link in the show notes below for the networking stuff. So I urge you to watch that before you watch this video. Other than that, let's get started after the fade. All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. So I'm going to call this Barebones web server. So I'll just call it BBWS. So when we run it, it's a little bit easier to run than that. You could call it something a bit more descriptive, but I'm just going to stick with that. So click on OK, and that's going to go through to the wizard. So now that it's created this here, I'm going to create one file just now, and I'm going to call that main.cpp. So that's going to be our main entry point, main.cpp. And then I'll put a link in the show notes below, but you want to go to this gist here, and I'm just going to copy the entire contents of this. I think there is a, no there isn't. Okay, I'll just copy it like this. So I'll copy that, and I'll paste that in there, and build it, make sure it runs. So we'll do that, and then we'll run it. We should come up with this warning here. So we're going to allow access to here, and if I run putty, let's just make sure this works. Hello there. So we shouldn't see anything inside the server, but you see that we've got that there. So if we run on a putty client, and we connect there, you can see sup, and then we see the values coming back there. Now you notice that it's got this extra return character. I think that's an affectation of putty rather than this. But you know, putty's just there for a test. We're going to build our own client. Actually, we're not going to build our own client because we're actually going to use something very special, because this is actually going to be a Barebones web server that I'm going to build. So we're just going to take the code that we have here, and in this video, we're going to split this code up so that it's going to be a class. And then once we've finished everything, we're then going to then transport that so that it's available on other machines as well. So we're going to get rid of things like socket. We're not going to use socket. We're going to use integers. So those kind of things are going to change. So we'll do that as we sort of go through the process here. So the first thing to do is create a header file. So I'm just going to create one here, and I'm going to call this TCP Listener, and it's going to be a header file. And we're going to add that there. And this is going to be our header file for the class. So this is going to be the interface that people use to access our class. Now, the listener itself is not actually going to do anything. It's just going to be an abstract class. We're not going to do, we're not actually going to use a TCP listener. We're going to create another class for that. But this is going to sort of give us our sort of starter for 10, so to speak. Actually, we could probably, yeah, let's do, okay, maybe not then. Okay, I'll come to that in a sec. My thought on that. And then down here we want TCP Listener. And that's going to be a C++, so that's going to be where all the code exists. And so our header file here is going to be class TCP Listener. It's a fairly basic class definition here. So we're going to have some public stuff, we're going to have some protected stuff, and we're going to have some private stuff. And the private stuff is going to be const char IP address, const int port. It's not const, sorry, that's just an integer, and then that's going to be an integer socket. We'll call that socket. So if I bring these out so that like this, make it a little bit tidier. IP address server will run on port number for the service, and then the internal socket file descriptor for the listening socket. Actually, that's giving me file descriptor for listening socket. So that's all our things that we've got addressed there. And now all it takes is we're going to take all the code that we had in our C++ class and then basically copy it across into either the .h file or the CPP file. So what things are we going to need for in here? So we have it split up quite neatly. So we have our initialize winsock, creating a socket. We bind the address to, we bind the socket to an IP address and port. We listen in on it. And then we have our sort of our runtime here. So this is our sort of runtime part that we do things. So we can split this into like an initialize portion, and then we can have this as a run portion. Okay. So in our C++, sorry, our header file, we're now going to have, let's make it int init. We also want to have our run. So this is going to be initialize the listener, run the listener. And we probably want to have like a stop as well. But we'll leave that for another time. Maybe we'll do that when we're doing our conversion to other operating systems. So now we have a constructor. Now the constructor, we can make this as complicated as possible, or we can make this as simple as possible, and I like the simplest possible one. So I'm going to have a TCP listener, and it's going to take in a const jar IP address, and it's going to take in a port number. And all that's going to do is it's going to initialize these variables here. So that's going to be m IP address, m port, and that's it. That's all the constructor is going to do. We don't have any code in here. We don't need it to do anything. All we need it to do is initialize these internal values. And that's the format you use if you've never seen this before. That's what that means is I'm going to have a constructor. It's going to take in these two values, and then we're going to initialize our internal values, and we're not going to do any processing there. Usually you want to do that if you're like initializing an array or something like that. You want to set everything to 0 or a specific value. But in this case, we're not going to do that. We just need to set those values there. So these are our two functions, and we implement them inside our C++ file. So we're going to have include TCP Listener, and then we're going to have int TCP Listener, and then init, and int TCP Listener, run, and that is going to do it for that for just now. But we also have all these include files up here, which we really don't need inside our main. So I'm going to remove them. I'm just going to do control, and then I'm going to do that. So that's going to obliterate everything in there. And I'm going to put that in this file. So instead of the include files all in there, all I'm going to do for here is include TCP Listener, because that's all I need to include. So I can actually just get rid of all of these. So because I've included TCP Listener, that includes all these header files here. So everything else is satisfied. So everything else just works. And we can probably get rid of that because that's going to cause problems later on. And then for an initialize winsock and creating a socket, I'm going to cut these out here, and I'm going to put them inside the initialize here. and we're not going to output anything here. We're just going to return bad values. So that's going to return WSOK. So whatever that result was, we're going to return that back. For this one here, our listening socket is not actually listening anymore because we need it to be available throughout the entire class. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our socket variable down here. So if we go back to here, we can say socket equals that and get rid of that. And similarly, we want to do that as well. And then for the rest of these, we're going to do WSA get last error. And that's our initialize winsock and our create socket. If you're confused by any of this stuff, then there's a link in the show notes to the playlist for all the C++ networking videos. But essentially what we're doing here is building a class just with the existing code that we've already got. Okay, and now we want to bind the IP address and the port to the socket. So that's what this code here does. And if we go back into here, we'll paste that down in here. And you see that we have our port, which is hard-coded to 54,000. So we're going to change that to M port, which is our port number there. We have this internet address any. We could also use inet piton. We are going to use inet piton for this. So we're going to get rid of that line. I'm going to use inet piton, which stands for pointer to a string to number. I know it doesn't look like that, but that's what it looks. That's what it means. So we specify the family, so it's going to be AF inet. We're going to specify the address string, which is going to be M IP address, and then the location where we want to put that, which is going to be our hint syn address, and that's that. And now we can try and bind it to here. So if that doesn't work, then we want to return the last error. So I'm going to bind that to the socket here, but I want to say if that equals socket error, return WSA get last error. So I want to make sure that when we're going through this, that it doesn't just blindly fall through here, because I want to be able to use this TCP listener for other things, not just echoing things back to the console, which is what we could use it for in this example, which is what we will be using it for in this example. But we're going to be doing a Barebones web server as well, so that'll be the next video. Okay, so now we want to be able to listen in on the socket, so we're going to get rid of that from here, and we're going to paste that in here, and we're going to do exactly the same thing again. We're going to say if that equals socket error, return WSA get last error, and we'll change that to M socket. Okay, so again, all we're doing is we're just repeating, we're just taking the code from our main function here and then putting it into the appropriate function further down, not further down, inside our C++ class. Okay, and where are we? So this one was, we're now at the run portion of it. So what we want to do is when we run it, we want to be able to set that listening socket. We want to set that in there. So we need a master set. So we don't want that inside our class, inside our main code. We want that inside our class. So I'm going to get rid of that. And then I'm going to put that inside our header file here. So I'm going to say that there, and I'll call that master master file descriptor set. So that's our master file descriptor set there. So now anytime we reference it, we are going to use that variable instead of master. So I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to put that inside our initialize. That's going to be the last values inside the initialize. That's going to be m_master, and again m_master. And that should eventually reset. Oh yeah, socket. There you go. Now it will reset. All right. And then finally we need to do return 0. So if it returns 0, that means that no error has occurred and we're all good. So that's our initialize function done. So again, it's exactly the same as we did before. We initialize winsock, we create a socket. If that fails, we're going to return our last error. We then try and bind the IP address and the port to that socket. Remember, the socket is just a handle. It's just a file handle to the actual output network port. And this is a very Unixy thing, that everything's a file. And I'm so grateful for that, because everything really is a file. It's just a stream of bytes. And so if we fail that bind, we want to return our get last error. Similarly, in here, we've got our listen. So if we fail the listen, we're going to get the last error. Otherwise, everything's fine. We're going to zero the master file descriptor. We're going to add the socket, the listening socket, to the master file descriptor. And again, that's in our multi-client link in the show notes below. And we're good. So that's our initialize function. Now, our other function, the run function, is going to be slightly different for the web server. So for this one, we're gonna copy this wholesale for now, okay? Just to make it a little bit easier for us. So let's cut that there, and then inside here we're going to paste that into run. And then we'll fix all the problems as we get them. So the first thing is make a copy of the master, blah, 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 blah. Of course, master is now master. So we can change that there. We're now going to go through these things here. So is it an inbound connection? So we want to change that to socket, because that's our inbound connection. Again, we have an inbound connection. That would be socket. Because we accept in on the listing socket, and our listing socket is m_socket. Add the new connection to the list of connected clients. So again, that's going to be m_master. Send a welcome message to the connected client. I'm going to comment that out just now, and I'm going to add to do message client connected. Okay, so I don't know what I'm going to do for client connected, but I know I need to do something for client connected. Otherwise, it's an inbound message. So if the inbound message is less than or equal to 0, that means the client's dropped, and we should remove it from the socket. We also might want to do a to-do client disconnected. We may need to know that the client is disconnected. Okay. And then we want to check and see if it's a command. Let me comment that out just now. And then otherwise, we want to send it to everybody else. So I'm going to do m_master, and then this is going to be m_socket. And then the rest of this is just all, I don't want that there. And then we need to tidy up our stuff here. So we need to m_socket, m_master, m_socket. I don't want to do this just now. So I just want to basically get it to compile, and then I don't want to do any of this just now. I do want this though. Remove it from the master. Remove that from the master. Close the socket. Clean up. Okay, so that's everything sorted out now. So there was a couple of things that I want to handle. The first thing is when a client connects. I want to be able to handle when a client connects. I want to be able to send a message to the client. And I also want to be able to broadcast a message to the clients or multiple clients. So what do I have here? Okay, so I want a client connected and I want a client disconnect. So I'm going to have a couple of protected methods in here. One called on client connected, void on client disconnected, handler for client connections, handler for client disconnections. I mean, who knows what you might need to do that for. We also want to send things out. So we want to do send or what do we want to do? Do we want to call it broadcast? Or do we want to call it send? Send message seems very generic. Let's call it send to client, client ID, or let's call it client socket, const char message, int length. So that is going to be send a message to a client. We also need to know what values are inside the master file descriptor list, descriptor set, because in our example here, where are we? We go through, is this the close? No, this is the send. So this is send message to other clients and definitely not the listening socket. So we want to broadcast to everything. So yeah, I think we want that there. Okay, so I think we want do we want to access that? All right, let me just leave that just now. Maybe we don't want to do that. Maybe we want to have a void. Do I want to broadcast? Maybe I do want to broadcast. Clients int sending client const char message int length broadcast message from a client. Okay. All right. So now we need to implement these methods here, but really, I think I want to make these virtual. Because I want to be able to override them, but I don't want these to be virtual because I don't want anyone overriding the send to client or broadcast to client because I think that would be bad. So I'm going to recreate these down here. These ones here. Okay. So broadcast to client, well, send to client. Send to client is an easy one. So send to client, we have, oops, is this one here. Okay. So our send to client is just going to be send, and then it's going to be client socket, and then whatever the message is, and then whatever the size is, length. And then for our broadcast is going to be similar to this here. So our broadcast is going to be that. So if the out socket is not the same as this one, and out socket is not the same as sending client, then I want to send a message. So I'm going to do send to client, and then it's going to be out socket, message, length. So if any logic changes inside our send method, for whatever reason, our send to client method, then this is going to do the right thing. So our broadcast is always going to do the right thing. And then I want to have a virtual void on message received. Int client socket const char message int length. Handler for when a message is received from the client. Okay, and our message received, we're gonna default that to something. So we need to have these as values or as functions just now. So I'm going to put these at the bottom, and then I'm going to have, just doing this for quickness, and that there. Okay. And so our on client connected, on client disconnected, and on message received. We don't do anything with them. We're not going to do anything with them, but we need to have them there because they are virtual functions. And why is that not there? Oh, because I did not do that, and that should fix that. Okay. Is that everything? I think that's everything. I think that's all the methods we have to put in, but we do need to put these values in here. So send a message to other clients, definitely not the listening socket. Well, we're not actually doing that. We're not doing this either. What we want to do though is we want to say on client disconnected, and we need to pass in the socket. I don't know why we missed that. So on client disconnected, that's going to be int client socket, and this too is going to be int client socket as well. And I'll put that in there and that in there. Okay. So now we have our when. Let me get rid of that. Drop the client. So on client disconnected is going to call that virtual function. When the client connects, we're going to say on client connected client. I'm going to leave these comments in just now because I want to do something in just a sec. So I'm keeping the comments there because I actually want to fulfill something else. And then we want to send a goodbye message. Maybe we want to have as like a shutdown. I'm going to leave that just now. We'll get back and tidy that later on. And tidy the code up a little bit more here, put in a blank line there. Okay, I think that's everything. The only difference is, or the only thing I'm missing is, that shouldn't be there. This is when you receive a message. This is going to be on message received, and then it's the client, so it's going to be sock, and then the message itself, which is going to be the buffer, and then the bytes received. Bytes in. Okay, and if we build that, that should build. I've commented most of the code out, so it should build. Oh, no. Must return the value. Okay. That's going to return 0. Okay. All right, that worked. So that leaves this in here. So now I'm going to say, well, actually, I don't want a TCP listener. I want something else. So that's our TCP listener. Our TCP listener is going to be used for the web service that we're going to build, but really we want to do this as a proof of concept. So I'm going to create another class. Oops. Another class, and this is going to be called multi-client listener, or let's call it chat, multi-client chat, and I'm going to create another source file here called multi-client chat. Oh, chatty. Let me get rid of that E there. Okay. So I'm going to include that there. And then in here, I'm going to say this is going to be a class called multi-client chat. Can't stop putting that E there. And I'm going to say public TCP listener. Include TCP listener. Okay. And then I'm going to have public multi-chat. And then this is going to take in a const char star IP address int port TCP listener IP address port. I'm just calling the base class with those two parameters. And then protected, I have these virtual methods. Where are we? Which are these ones here: on client connected, on client disconnected, and on message received. So I'm going to grab a hold of these and go to here, paste these in here, and then I am going to implement them inside here. So I'm going to grab that there, that there, that there, get rid of them, that, and rid of that. Okay. So on client connected, what I'm going to do inside here is I'm going to do include string, and now I'm going to start doing my output. So this is, so what we've created is we've created our TCP listener base class, and then we're going to use our TCP listener base class to create this subclass called multi-client chat that's going to give us the functionality that we had in the first place. I know this is an awful long walk for a shortcut, but it does mean that we can now, in the second video, we can then scrap this multi-chat client, or just not use it, I should say, and we can build our web server using this same class. Okay, so we go back to tcplistener.cpp. You'll see that we have things in here like when a client connects. So on client connected, send a welcome message. So I'm going to take that out because we don't need that anymore in there. And then inside here, we do on client connected is this. So we'll get rid of that there. And then we pass that back to our client now. Because we have, let's do standard string, welcome message is that. because we have this here, we do that. We now do send to client, and this is going to be client socket. The message, which is going to be welcome message dot cstring, welcome message dot size +1. Because this is a subclass, we have access to the methods inside the class. Okay. Or do we? Yeah, we do. Let me just check that. Okay. And okay, and now we have our client disconnected, which we're not going to actually implement. But we do want to do this on message received because we want to broadcast that client. So we want to broadcast a message. So we're going to say broadcast to clients. Then we specify the sending client. So that's client socket. And then the message that they sent out. So that's going to be MSG, comma, length. Okay. And now if we go back to our main, instead of TCP Listener, we're actually doing multi-chat client. No, multi-client chat. Multi-client chat. There we go. So we can have our multi-client chat, call it MCC, and then we pass in our IP address, which is going to be 0.0.0.0, and then the port, which is 54,000. If mcc.init not equal to 0, return mcc.run. Okay, so we're not going to bother checking the run in this case. We just want to make sure that this works, because this video is now 37 minutes long. So we're going to build this, run it, do putty, we'll connect to there, and you see that it says welcome to the awesome chat server. We'll build another one, putty, and we'll put those two there, and then we'll say hello, how are you? I am fine, kill, and so on. So everything's working as expected. Actually, if we go to here, and then I set a breakpoint on here, and then I disconnect this client and we do OK, you'll see that we now actually end up inside this code here. So we can detect when clients disconnect as well. So yeah, it's a fully functioning multi-chat client. Just reworked everything into our TCP Listener class. Now our TCP Listener is a very bare API for everyone calling it, because all they need to do is they specify the address, the port, and then initialize and run, and that's it. And that's for every TCP listener that we do. So our web service is going to be exactly the same. All the code is going to exist inside these functions here. If we want to send anything back, everything's done for us in here. So yeah, we don't need to worry about anything else there now. The only thing we need to concern ourselves with is with how we build a web server, and that is in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this video. People have been asking about doing sort of something else with networking, and I figured this would be a kind of fun example, is building your own web server, because who doesn't want to do that? It's a cool thing to do. So the first step though was to take the Barebones client and then bring that into a class, and then use that class to build on to whatever TCP listener we wanted to do. So yeah, that was my plan, and hopefully it makes sense what I'm doing. And if not, leave a comment below. If you liked the video, thumbs up. If you didn't, thumbs down. Let me know either way. This is the last video of 2018. I don't know what year it is. 2018. So I wish you all happy holidays, happy new year, and we'll see you in 2019. But yeah, thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.